Hello, my name is Kirsten Beal, and today I'm going to be talking about educational diversity for the Missouri Baptist class ETOP 583. Now, for this presentation, I'm going to be talking about diversity in education and educational diversity and how that affects classrooms around the United States. So what is educational diversity? There's various forms of educational diversity in the classroom, some of which include different learning styles, race, ethnicity, gender, language, and the types of language they use both at school and at home, culture, mental ability, physical ability, and then social emotional intelligence. Now, why is this important, and why is this important for teachers to learn about? Now, I have put a picture of a classroom in the 1950s, and you can see it's very standard. Everyone's kind of doing the same thing. They're sitting in the same desk. They're sitting in rows, looking at the same book, and they're all raising their hands in order to answer a question that the teacher would probably be asking up in front of the classroom. Now, this classroom looks a little bit different than the classrooms that are happening now in the 21st century. Here's a picture I found of a classroom in the 21st century. You can see a variety of differences. First of all, there's a couple different teachers. You can spot about 3 of them in the classroom that are kind of leading different groups. Second thing I can see is that there's different students kind of doing different things. Some are standing, some are sitting, some are moving around the classroom. Another thing is you see a lot of the tables, and there are a lot of groups, and that's how a lot of the things we're learning now. So there's a variety of ways that students can learn in this type of classroom. There's a lot of different learning styles being treated, and so this is how a 21st century classroom is now. This is the norm. Now, what is culture? There's a lot of different influences with educational diversity. One of them is cultural influences. There's lots of different types of things that make up culture. For example, the values that someone has, or the values that their family has, the behaviors that they see, and the behaviors that they display, the beliefs that they have, the beliefs that their family have, and the attitudes, whether it's attitudes at school, attitudes at home, or attitudes about certain things in the world, such as different types of education, types of things that they're learning. And all of these make up a culture. So there you can see that there's going to be a lot of differences within culture in the classroom. Now, some of the influences that can affect educational diversity is the disparities between parents and educators. There's a lot of differences between the culture that an educator may have and the parents may have within their own homes that can affect the classroom. Also, there is a variety of differences within the way that students are behaving in the classroom based on their culture. For example, I found a study that said Asian students, not all of the time, but at most times, were quieter during school and class time, while European students were taught to be active in discussions and activities and play more of a role in their education. So these are just some differences in the way that culture can affect how it plays out in education. Now, as educators, we must be aware of the students' cultures and behaviors in the classroom. We should learn about our students' culture and use that information to help us teach to their culture and help us kind of celebrate that culture. Now, another type of influence is familial and community influences. Now, oftentimes, family support and involvement in education and preparation play a big role in how the students are supported both at home and at school, and how often they are supposed to be successful. Also, another thing that can influence diversity in education is language barriers. A lot of times, students can come from different areas around the world and use a different language at home than at school. And so language barriers can be an issue from some schools and families. So maybe that student, say their family's from Mexico, they could be using Spanish, as Spanish could be their first language, and they could be using it at home, which can make it sometimes difficult for the schools and the parents to communicate based on that language barrier. So what we need to do as educators is to help bridge that gap and communicate with families. So translation strategies, trying to find that way to reach all of the families so that we can work together to support every student in the school. Another way that you have influences within educational diversity is with political influences. Now, there's two big acts that have come about in recent years that play a big role in educational diversity. The first one is the Individuals with Disabilities Act, Education Act, which is IDEA. And this act supports students with disabilities. So it helps individualize their education and kind of find ways to help support them based on either using a 504 plan or individualized education plans, also known as IEPs. So within an IEP or a 504, you would have a group of people coming together to talk about ways that they can best support the student to help them succeed. Another way that you have political influences within educational diversity is with the No Child Left Behind Act, or NCLB. Now, this act started This act probably started about 20 years ago, I believe in 2000, 2001, and this act was to help keep both teachers and schools accountable on student achievement. So this was to make sure that the whole school was being accounted for the success of all the students. Now, this kind of brought about the standardized testing and how it's gotten to be a big portion of what is happening today in schools. So in grades 3 through 8, there are various forms of testing across the United States. One major test for all of the students in these grades. It can vary from state and district, but it just keeps the states accountable to make sure that they are achieving. Now, societal influences often affect multicultural education and educational diversity. So there's a couple different ways to go about the societal influences, and Kushner classified social class as a number of ways, but it's mainly the way of people in social groups, communities, and societies. So there's a way to signify the worth of a group. Now the main way to define a social class in the United States is including family income. So if there's a low class, middle class, they're working, and then a high class. Another way to have influences is social status. Now, this is going to be a little bit different because it's based on it's a hierarchical position determined not so much by one's wealth, but by the prestige, social esteem, and honor, as Kushner says. So it's quite possible to have someone have a social status but not having a big income. It's based on how they're perceived. So what we need to do as educators is to work with these two classes and status and help realize that we're all working together. And I provided a image right here. It says, "Together, everyone achieves more." And I thought this was really something that I tried to show in my classroom, is that by all of us working together, this can help us become really successful. Now, how can we use this as teachers in our classroom? Now, the main couple of things that I want to make sure you take away is building trust with your students and parents is the utmost importance, making sure you are learning about their culture and they're learning about yours. So that's bringing books in and learning about the cultures of your students, cultures of other students in the school, and involve the students in the learning process. Have someone come and talk to them about what kind of holiday they celebrate that maybe is different in their classroom. One way that I use this in my classroom is I connect with classrooms around the globe, around the country, to kind of talk and celebrate our differences and our diversity. Another thing is sharing books within our classroom that are very diverse. This is something that I have done before in previous years, is celebrating how everyone is different and what makes everyone unique. I think this is something that really is interesting for the students to see how, yeah, we're all different and yet we all have something in common. And the being in the school in the same class in the same grade, I think that's something interesting to share. One of my favorite ways to celebrate diversity is through books. These are just some of the books that I have in my classroom that celebrate diversity and educational diversity, whether it's based on race, based on physical ability, based on gender, but based on ethnicity, based on mental abilities, and social emotional intelligence. This is something that I like to share so that students can understand and can see themselves in the stories. And so providing a wide range of these books is something that I think is really important. Now, in conclusion, there are many different ways that educational diversity exists in the classroom, and we need to be aware of it and within our families and our students to get to know them, whether that's through using a survey to get to know each other at the beginning of the year. You need to be able to celebrate these educational diversity of all the students and work together with your families to make sure that they're supported and when they need help. And also my favorite way is bringing in diverse books in our classroom so that students can see themselves when they read. I think that is one of the most important ways. And here are my references. I hope you enjoyed learning more about educational diversity in the classroom. Thank you.